All right, folks, good to have all of you here with us. Thanks for joining us here after the Riot Report. I'm Earl Arms, host of Black Nouveau on Milwaukee PBS. So happy to have this distinguished group of folks here with us. Starting to my left, Prentice McKinney, who was a youth commando for Father James Grappi. Legendary journalist Liddy Collins, who was with CORE back in the day and attended the Freedom Schools there. Just coming on now, Claiborne Benson, newly minted with his master's. Congratulations, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, the head of the Wisconsin Black Historical Society. Also, Dr. Robert Smith is with us here from Marquette University. How you doing, sir? Good to see you.
Glad to be here. Good to see you.
Absolutely. And of course, last but certainly not least, our producer, Everett Marshburn of Black Nouveau. So happy to have all of you. Thank you all for joining us. I will start with you, Prentice, since you are on my left and you're the first person I see. Just from your experience with Father Grappi being in Milwaukee as this Kerner Commission report is being formed. Just what are your thoughts in seeing it? Did you really see the Milwaukee that you understood? They kind of painted a dark, grim picture, if you will, of Milwaukee in the report. So was that your experience, and what did you see?
We're not hearing.
There you go. Yep. I think I hear you. Oh, you get. Oh, yeah. Okay. I thought I heard you for a second, but here, while you get that together, Liddy, I guess I'll go to you first. Let's get you to talk about your thoughts on it. How did you see Milwaukee?
Watching that brought back so many memories. The tanks. If I had a tank in front of my house, if I lived on Atkinson Avenue, when the riots broke out in Milwaukee, we woke up with a tank, the building across the street burning. It was dramatic, and I don't know how much has changed since then.
It's funny you say that because I'm watching it and I'm trying to get to a point. I'm like, where, how does this sound any different than, 2020 or, now we're in 2024, right? What's really the difference? So Claiborne, I'll ask you then, as certainly the resident historian on this panel here, at least, through by title.
The older historian.
Just your thoughts on, your
well, I
views
saw.
of Milwaukee then,
I was a young man,
and now.
I was a young man at the time, and
you're on mute as well, sir.
Huh? I'm
unmute yourself.
Thank you. Mute myself? Am I? Do you hear me?
Oh yeah.
Are you hearing me?
Nope. You still got to unmute yourself.
I hear him.
I hear him.
I hear him.
Yeah, I can hear
Dr.
him.
Smith.
No,
are you
can hear Claiborne. Are you not hearing him, Earl?
Dr. Smith?
I can hear everybody.
Oh, everyone's
One,
muted.
2, 3,
oh, man.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh wow.
Yeah, we can hear everybody.
So I'm a young man, and I'm seeing the marches.
I'm
seeing people like Prentice and Father James Grappi. I'm Lloyd Bobby. I'm seeing marches of people going. I'm seeing freedom schools. I'm seeing poor housing conditions. My dad was telling me as we drive through the neighborhood, but they're going to rebuild Walnut Street back up. They're going to put new life into it, but they never do. They never did, and I saw racism in a huge way. I see signs sold on people's houses during the riots and demonstrations. I'm seeing a very impoverished neighborhood and in difficult times for us. We're living in a very segregated area, but I'm also seeing that nationally too. I'm not seeing that just in Milwaukee. It's happening in New Jersey, and it's happening in DC. It's happening in other cities throughout the South and the North. And sure, I think the bigger picture here is racism is happening in terms of not educating people, not having adequate housing. Work conditions were second to worst it was a bad time in this country, not just in Milwaukee, but all over.
I think we're good. I apologize about that. Sometimes we're at the will of our technology. For some reason, my audio.
Can you hear me okay?
I hear you just fine. Here, everybody just fine now. Everyone's mouth started moving, and I'm, wondering. Okay, I heard Liddy, and then I couldn't hear anybody else. So forgive me. I certainly apologize to all the folks out there and to all of you as well. So, Dr. Smith, I guess if you can follow Mr. Benson there, just with your thoughts on what you saw.
Yeah, absolutely. The Kerner Report, that book and its various components, is one of the most important, but then also widely used government documents and primary documents. It's still taught in classes. That report itself shaped 2 generations of scholarship. It shaped how we talk about urban America. It shaped the way historians who are concerned about folks in urban America listen to the voices of folks from urban America. It played an entire set of roles in redirecting not only historians, but social sciences, scientists and the social sciences as well, and pointing to those issues that folks closest to the issue say are most important.
So you'd argue that even if that impact maybe wasn't well received, certainly by President Johnson at the time, when maybe a lot of the establishment, that it still had a significant effect, or has a significant effect today.
It has not only an important echoing and important effect today. It has played a role in shaping 2 generations of folks who think about these issues, not merely from a policy perspective, but really from the perspective of the folks who are most impacted by the issue, and then the various issues, and then also the folks who oftentimes have the best ideas about how to address some of these issues.
And Mr. Prentice, did we get to hear from you, or was did we got you?
Not yet.
Right. Okay. So, but we got you. We're all good. I hear you. I think you're heard by everyone. So, I'm just wondering your thoughts on it, and especially since you were definitely boots on the ground then. Just how the Kerner Report resonated with you in seeing this now.
Your initial question, I believe, was about my participation in civil rights. Mm-hmm. Well, that was what the question addresses symptoms. The Kerner Report addresses causes. And so I guess I'd like to talk more about the Kerner Report itself rather than the symptoms.
Right.
Just made a couple notes. President Johnson asked the commission to find the truth, the whole truth, and express it in their report. The commission found, quote, white society was responsible for the structural and societal failings that led to the riots. Quote, white society is deeply implicated in the ghetto. White institutions created it, white institutions maintain it, and white society condones it. Mm-hmm. So, if you ask me, I would say this country was founded for WASP, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant males. It did not include us, never intended to include us. And so they sold us a dream and a lie. They said that all men were created equal while they held us in bondage. Not by accident. We do not live in accident. We live in a society that is structured to deprive us of certain things, but primarily resources. And so what we see today, and we may have a little discussion about this, is the lies being exposed, and Donald Trump is telling us the truth. There's no place for us here.
But we have to
Go ahead,
realize how we got here. We didn't voluntarily get here.
Exactly.
They brought us here. We were enslaved to come here.
Mm-hmm.
And now that the country was built on our back,
Mm-hmm.
we're asking for our part. We're demanding our part. We're tired of the begging part, but that's what's going on now. But what, from my vantage point, what I see is an economic breakdown, not just for us, but for the other folks. But now they're feeling it and they're blaming us because they're feeling the economic downfall.
I don't know if you wanted me to respond to that or someone
I don't
else.
know, Dr. Smith or you. What do you think about that?
Dr. Smith, go right ahead.
Well, it's not only that, it's even more. It's also the longstanding history of, and there are parts of the documentary and the Kerner Report that, talks about, for example, taxes and how taxes get used.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not only the longstanding history of the mistreatment, exploitation of labor, the denial of basic rights of citizenship. It's also the truncating and cutting off of generational wealth, opportunities to expand across generational wealth. And on a day-to-day basis, our own tax dollars don't benefit those who need it most. And it's oftentimes, of course, benefiting those who need it least or pay the least amount of taxes.
Earl, could I respond to that?
Please do.
It's no accident. It's structured that way. I think, and for the program, as well as for my own genealogy, I've been researching all the way back to, I think, the 1600s. And I came to a new understanding, an understanding very different from the one I had when I marched at the age of 19. That understanding was, and I looked up some terms because I was concerned about it. It was institution, right? We talk about institutional segregation. An institution is a society or organization founded for a similar purpose. Now, this country was stolen from the Indians.
True.
So they got the land free. They were escaping persecution themselves. And so they came here, stole the Indians' land, and then went and got us and stole our labor and our future. And our future, not by accident. This country is set up, not only was, but it's still currently set up for people like Donald Trump. He embodies it, the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant male. So all the institutions and all the systems are designed for that particular population without inclusion of any others. We, unfortunately, African Americans, bought the lie that all men are created equal. And so after believing that, we want to be included. Well, the system's not designed to include us. There is nothing in the Kerner Report that says that this system was designed to include Black people. Conversely, it says the opposite. It says that white Anglo-Saxon males designed this system, and it was the resources were to go to them. Everybody else, everything else was just property. We're in the dilemma, from my perspective, that we're in because we bought the lie. We thought it was meant to include us. We thought we should be included. I was doing some research for this in part, and a guy gave an example. He said, white people were down at the end of this hallway, And they've built this big brick building. And inside that building is all the resources, all the money, the jobs, all the resources. And we're excluded. And so we've gone down to the door, we've knocked on it, we've marched, we've gotten on our knees and we've prayed, let us in. We cannot survive without resources. Please, let us in. When I was 19, saying amongst African Americans, especially the ministers, was wait, be patient. White folks will give us a piece of the pie. I'm 76 years old. If I'd have waited on that, I'd have starved to death. The system's not designed for that. When you look at people like Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X, people who say, you know what, they're never going to treat us right. Separate, build your own. That's what the Muslims did because they understood this was not designed to include us. Now, throughout the years, we've somehow wiggled and gotten rights, right to vote, and all of that. Women even, you got the right to have an abortion, right? Now, if you look at your timeline, you see today all of that is turning around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The rights that you fought for, we fought for 400 years, are being now systematically taken away from us. Why? Because you weren't designed to be included, and you need to accept that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to. I want to bring up the question, and I'm looking at Everett, Lee, and Claiborne just because I know of your role in media. But I think of one of the parts of the Riot Report where they talked about how there were journalists that were unequipped to cover these cities. To truly go and see exactly what was going on and to truly get a story. I'm wondering, how do you see that compared to today? We talk about the similarities between, the backlash of, the legislation that was passed back when and how we, see things happening now. But I'm wondering in how these things have been covered. Just, what are your thoughts on, what you were seeing in the news then and, what you're seeing now?
Well, what I was seeing in the news then was not people that look like me. Mm-hmm. And that's extremely important. If the Kerner Commission did anything good, that's the one thing it did. It set in place getting people like me into the system. I mean, I am a Kerner Commission journalist. I started work in the fall of 1968 at the then growing public TV station, which actually had intentions of doing a lot of good things, noble things born. They weren't as successful as they'd like to be, but at least they got started doing some good things. And I think that's extremely important because you look at us, we don't always agree, but we have a better feel for what our problems are and how to solve them and the solutions. And we wouldn't have been able to do this before the Kerner Commission.
We need Black journalists to tell our stories. White journalists tell their stories. They may tell our stories, but they may overlook things that a Black journalist would not overlook. Or a shooter, like Claiborne, mm-hmm. He would shoot differently from a white journalist or white cinematographer. Am I correct?
Yeah, I was there, and I started in the summer of 1968, and I did shoot shootings and accidents and police shootings as well as the marches and demonstrations. I was young then, but I did shoot that. And I'd like to talk more about it. But I also want to step back and talk about this whole idea of slavery and the use of our labor. And then coming down, slavery is over. 700 people lose their lives through fighting. And here we are with the Reconstruction. They never completed the Reconstruction. They never allowed after the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment to take place, That was a period in which the Reconstruction is supposed. Now, what does that have to do with our marches and demonstrations? The Reconstruction was a period in which they were supposed to set in place equality and allow African Americans to assimilate into the general public and be equal citizens. That didn't happen whatsoever. They became they thought of it as being unnecessary, no longer necessary. And then here we are doing that. And so when I say 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment, 100 years later, in the early 1960s, they're passing the 15th, 16th, excuse me, they're passing the Civil Rights Bill, the right to vote, the right for equality, and the fair housing marches that Prentice and others marched in to get equality in housing and neighborhood. And these rights that we think will give us the kind of life we need in terms of a quality of life still fail, even though they're passed. The Fair Housing Bill passed. It's a Walter Mondale bill. The Fair Housing Bill that passed has been watered down to nothing today. It has no teeth into it whatsoever. The voting rights is being challenged every hour. The legislature takes $32 million out of the budget because they can. They are. Oh my goodness! I'm telling you, they're challenging the right to vote for Black people. And what is the covert? They closed the polls down. They're counting all of the ballots, all based on whether they're threatening the right for African Americans to vote. I mean, that's at the heart of this liberty that we've been talking about. Yeah. And when Johnson is saying we must do something, he talks about that in the Kerner Report. They end up doing nothing. He quits, and Nixon shuts down the whole system. He says, no longer are we going to make a difference in this process of changing and making an environment suited for Black people.
Dr. Smith, I want to.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I just want to bring Dr. Smith into this because we have a question from our viewing audience. This is from, I hope I say your name right, Maki Linda. So appreciate you for this question. Did the 2018 congressional report not find we are still in the same or worse state than when the Kerner Commission report was published? Dr. Smith, I'm looking at you to provide a response.
2018 sounds late for the report that I think is being referenced. I feel like it might have been a little earlier than that, but I can't attest to the exact date. But what we do know is at various intervals, at various cycles, we do revisit the data, we do revisit the research. If you look into, as folks on the call have said, if you look into voting rights, if you look into education, if you look into employment, from city to city, sort of a region. If you look at a regional perspective in some areas, you can see data confirming that things are either the same or as worse as when the Kerner Commission's report came out. It fluctuates, it changes, but depending on where you look, depending on how the studies work, you can see very much similar data from any of those arenas: voting rights, housing, employment, education. You just see it over and over and over.
So it sounds like strides have been made from the Kerner Report. Everett, you mentioned a few, especially around the faces of journalism. But I'm curious as to everyone else's thought. Are we better off or worse off than in 2018?
Worse, Mr. Arms. When Brown versus the Board of Education is passed, people celebrated that was going to make a major difference. Less than 3 years later, they're cheating on Brown. Less than 3 years later, it's Lloyd Bobby that brings attention to it. Less than 3 years later, they find that the Black kids are studying in cold hallways and in trailer parks on the back of playgrounds with secondhand and unqualified teachers all over the nation, and emphasis on Milwaukee. So yes, there is continued efforts to, and when they are trying to get, I'm trying to think of his name. They're trying to get business initiatives passed in the 1970s. They're stealing money from the Nixon administration, and Nixon does give money to Milwaukee, but they cut it off in 75, 76. They began to cut it just when we began to get a legs under that. That gives us real life for places like North Division, Martin Luther King Center, and encouraging people to start their own businesses, little grocery stores and laundromats and things of that nature. Some of the Nixon money does come out, but it's all too short. It's just simply cut it out without giving any explanation to people of color for not allowing these initiatives to go forward.
That was the premise of the report, just too little, too late. So what do we do now, especially here in Milwaukee when the situation was so dire then, and we always see the studies out now how Wisconsin is the worst place for a Black family to be raised and to be, and all the
Black males.
Yeah, exactly. And right here in Milwaukee, prime example. So, so what can we do now? How do
Start
we
loving each other, stop fighting each other, because that's really where the heart is. I mean, we're our worst enemy.
It's called divide and conquer now.
Certainly, the white people are against us, but we are against ourselves, and it's not just starting with you or I. Our politicians are competing with each other and not taking care of the business that need to be. Our people are not voting. They see little signs of not getting. Our kids are not getting the kind of education they need. All of these little things hold us back. I think that the Bronzeville piece really has some opportunities and some but it's too easy to fall in a hole.
Can we talk about history a little bit? Because I think that's important. 70 years ago was the Brown decision. 50 years ago was the March on Washington. And all of what those things at least stood for seemed to be getting lost.
The black man, the March on Washington, the black man going out, all of that is important, sir.
What do we need to do in terms of teaching history? How can we make that happen? And teaching people our role in it. I mean, when I first came here, one of the first things I did was an MLK speech on MLK Day. And when I said he didn't plan the March on Washington, the audience looked at me like I was crazy. It was planned by A. Philip Randolph and Baird Rustin. They didn't even know those names, and they thought I was totally out of line.
So I'd like to teach the significance of voting, how important voting is, and how we were squeezed out of voting 150, 160 years ago with the referendum vote of 1849. And over the years, they've been snatching our vote over and over in many different forms. I mean, the voter ID, what did we do before that? All of these methods of preventing us from having the right and having a voice in the outcome of what happens to us. Because when we can vote, we can make a decision on our own vote. We don't have that right because we allowed them to steal our vote by threatening us, by counting the votes. All these little things that deny us from taking that initiative.
Another little thing is we have to make education more important again. We have to make education important. Because our children cannot read.
That's true.
On our elementary level, we have to make education important again, because that feeds into all the other stuff, the reading, the voting, learning your history.
Yes.
So I hear education, I hear history, I hear voting. Mr. Prentice, what's your solution for what we do now?
Well, you look at the cause of the problem. What are we suffering from? Lack of finance, lack of resources, not by accident. Claiborne was talking about following the Civil War, right?
Yes, Reconstruction.
I'm sorry. If you look at the Reconstruction period, what you find is after we are emancipated and we start to try and develop some things, we got to find a job first. We're free, but you ain't free if you can't feed yourself, if you can't feed your family. And so from a systemic standpoint, Southern plantation owners got together and they said, do not allow them to control any means of generating wealth, not the land, not their labor, okay? Keep them impoverished, and we don't have to worry about them. Now, today you say we have these problems, we don't have education, our education isn't sufficient and so forth. I agree, but the root of the problem is the lack of money. Now, question is, what do you do about that today?
And they use Plessy versus Ferguson as the key to make those beginning changes by segregation across the board.
Dick Gregory said something to me. Oh, let me back up for a minute. I had the opportunity to personally meet with the Kerner Commission, right? We were invited in to meet with him. And Roy Wilkins and I went head to head. I was 19, angry about the situation, still angry about it today, right? And Roy said to me, he said, I'm like, well, what do you guys want? Called us down here to this room. What do you want? He said, we want to know why Black people are out in the streets rioting. I said, Negro, get out of my face. That's a dumbass question coming from you. Okay. So I had opportunity to sit down and talk with him. I don't need to talk to you if you already know what the problem is. Let's talk about solutions. Don't come here asking me that. But anyway, so I'm done.
The only person we haven't heard from yet as far as the solution is Dr. Smith. So education, history, voting, money. And Dr. Smith.
It's all of the above, obviously, and that's not a bailout on my part. It requires revisiting strategies and tactics that worked before. Considering the new landscape we're in. What's significantly different about before is the emergence of digital technology. It's reshaped our orientation to the world, but it's also opened up the world to us in a lot of ways. We've seen a particularly new brand of entrepreneurship as a result of it. We also see some of the same forms of entrepreneurship that still work. We've got business owners on our call, but that does require that we continually stay committed to supporting businesses in our communities, believing in our institutions over the long haul, whether that's, our various franchises or our own schools and our own teachers. It requires all of the above, and those folks who work in those arenas to have the full breath to do the kinds of work that makes all of this come alive.
So you mentioned digital technology. We're in the age of social media, of course. So that's a difference. That's a difference. But are you folks essentially optimistic that plus, all the other advances we have made can see us to a brighter future?
Let me just say this from a historical standpoint, and we see it today in our lives. Whatever the system has allowed us to gain, over time, it's taken it back. That's just a statement of fact. Now we can talk about institutions of higher learning and this and that and our rights to vote. And there's only a certain amount of flexibility within a system that is designed to keep you down, to deprive you. Think about what I'm saying. You don't have a job. Your wife doesn't have a job. What do you expect your kids to do? There's only two kinds of money. That's legal money and illegal money. And so when you deprive me of the right to support my family legally, what am I going to do? I got to have some money to live. And so when I reach and touch that money, you say, ha ha, see, that's what Negroes do. Okay? It fulfills the stereotype that you have about me that you have created and now forced me to comply with that stereotype. You have to rethink, I think, we have to rethink our involvement with America and understand America lied to us, man, lied to every one of us, and we were dumb enough to believe it. Now we're not that dumb anymore. We see the contradictions. And you ask the question, what are we going to do about it, Prentice? We're going to recognize it for what it is, and things won't change. Okay? One of the things I've learned in life about power never concedes itself.
You sure do.
Power only respects power. So if you think that us marching and being nonviolent, everything this system has, it has taken through force. So if you think that we're going to accomplish, yeah, we're going to give it a little bit. They'll give us a little bit, and then they'll take it back. So, I mean, it's clear to me, and Kerner made it clear when they said this is no accident. This ghetto was established and is maintained with the approval of white people. And the army that they use to enforce it is called the police department, which originated from slave chasers, the slave patrols. That's the origin of it. Their power comes from the white society. Therefore, we're going to be limited. I mean, I love today. Let me just flash back for a second. When I was 19, Chief Breyer was the chief of police in Milwaukee. The mayor, Henry Meyer. The judge, Chris Surfam. Might as well have it. Hanging judge. Right? Today, we've got a black mayor. We got a black chief of police. And I'm very thankful for that. But I don't know how far he can even go. Right? We got a black county exec. My cousin, Gwen Moore. We got a black congresswoman. Okay? So we've made progress. But it was interesting. Brenda Moore, Gwen's sister, and I were talking. And we were talking about the fact that Milwaukee is now a minority majority city. And we sit in some of the seats of power. And you know what Brenda said to me? She said, Prentice, after they burn it up, they give it to us. Mm-hmm. After they wear it out, they give it to us. And then when it fails, guess who they blame?
Prentice, I don't think we have it. I mean, yes, we have the mayor and the county supervisor. We don't have no control or no ownership. It is the powers to be downtown and businesses that run even the city halls and the county board. It is not us, not in the least bit.
What do you mean us?
Us meaning the city, the African American community. Well, that's what I mean.
We have black leadership that is very different from the leadership in this city when I was raised here.
That's true.
Okay, so
but they don't have any power to make the kind of decisions that.
The question that was presented was, have we made any progress?
Yes.
Okay, and so you can look at that and say, yeah, we have, right? But then the reality is, from where? They wore it out, right? We just had to do a school referendum to get some money for this city, right? Now they've worn it out, and when it fails, well, you know, them black people, they can't do nothing right anyway. We tried to give them a chance, just like in Reconstruction. Look at what happened. We tried to give them a chance. We're always going to be at fault because the system, the Kerner Report says it, the system is designed and maintained by white Anglo-Saxons, and it's not going to change. And when we do stuff like elect Barack Obama, you should have known that Donald Trump was coming.
But even when he was a president, the Congress, Senate, all controlled him. And it's the same way here in Milwaukee, that although we do have a county supervisor and a county executive and the mayor, the system controls them. You're right in principle that there's not going to be a change because they still control.
Exactly.
All right.
Exactly. But let me say this, and I'm going to shut up because I like listening, actually. Let me say this. They say no man is above the law, right? Everybody know who I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No man is above the law unless you got Donald Trump's kind of money.
Mm-hmm.
But you're talking nationally, but it should be local.
Let me finish
I mean,
my point.
our community is so dysfunctional within itself, and they've created that dysfunction.
That is part of the structure of
yeah.
the institutions.
It's true.
Right? They use divide and conquer amongst the Indians.
Yep, it's divide and conquer, right?
You think they aren't going to have us fighting amongst each other?
Yes.
That's part of how you maintain control.
Yes.
All right. We got about a couple minutes left, so I just want to get final thoughts from Ms. Liddy and then Dr. Smith. So, Liddy, just your final thoughts on the conversation and on the Riot Report.
Things have not changed much, and the things that we marched or fought for are under attack: voter rights, housing, because the housing here is terrible. And then they use the quote words. What is the play words there? Affordable housing these days, but that goes by community. Those fun words. That's it.
All right, Dr. Smith.
Yeah, given the history that the folks have laid out on the call, it's difficult to be optimistic, but I am curious. I'm curious what the future holds. I'm curious what the future looks like, because our young people are living a different world. They have a whole different thing that they got going on, and I'm curious to see what they do with it and what they do with the future.
Yes.
And Everett, your thoughts?
I agree with Dr. Smith.
Yes.
If there is to be any change, it's in their hands, and I just hope that we prepare them well enough to make that change.
All right, we'll leave it on that note. Prentice McKinney, Claiborne Benson, Liddy Collins, Robert Smith, Everett Marshburn, thank you all for taking part of this conversation. And for those of you at home or out there listening, thank you so much for joining us. Make sure if you want to re-listen or hear some of the conversation, this is being recorded and you'll be able to hear it on MilwaukeePBS.org. Once again, go to MilwaukeePBS.org for a recording of this conversation. So thanks again and take care.